sound makes sense, some path to glory, some hidden thing that one has been building to. The universe makes sense if you fit all the pieces to boat coming in.
So I was gonna make this video about atomic habits, but and do something like altruistic, like, oh hey, change your life with atomic habits. I've been reading Fourth Wing. Can I just say, I know all the romance girlies and all the fantasy girlies and all the romanticy girlies love reading about like fantasy sex or whatever. But like, why is heterosexual sex so boring? That make it exciting, like, because she has like lightning and stuff and like whatever, or, you know, spoiler alert, you know, she has like, she's like, I feel like the caress and it sends lightning through my body and I set the forest on fire and blah 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 blah. And it's like, dude, he just, I mean, I understand like being so excited, but like, dude, maybe it's just young people sex or whatever being so excited about. I don't know. I'm like, but when you read the description of what he's actually doing, it's really quite boring sex. I mean, he's not doing anything like super triple exciting sex. It's like, it's supposed to be that the point is that she is really turned on by him and it doesn't matter what he does, it's just going to be really exciting sex. But it's just really vanilla, boring. It's not really anything. I'm like, he just shoved his dick into her dick vagina. Like, okay. Like, I mean, I can understand if they were like having sex at like high altitudes or something, or on the back of a dragon. I don't know. That might be a little unnerving for the dragon. Free falling and fucking at like high altitudes or something. I don't know. Having sex in the mountains and like, woo. I guess they're having sex in the mountains or whatever. I don't know. What do people, what are the girlies like? Sexual stuff is like so personal. Sexual stuff is so personal, you know what I mean? I just read it and I'm like, well, yeah, okay. But like when it takes over because it starts off where it's good, it's a good book, it's a good fantasy book, you're like, yeah. And then like the sex stuff just like takes over the book. Just takes over. And it's so distracting. And you're just like, okay, when are we going to go back to... It's sort of like the writer was like horny and decided, hey, I'm gonna put this on my characters. They're just gonna be horny for about 200 pages. Because I'm horny. And I need to put this on my characters for 200 pages. Why not? Those poor characters suffering the wrath of the writer who is frustrated and horny for 200 pages. Sure, of course. Like, all right. sucking and fucking and all sorts of things, whatever. I don't know. Like, did she do market research? And she was like, maybe this is what the book needs is sex. Like, she did a market research test and she was like, you know what my book needs? More sex. Just 200 pages of unadulterated pornography. Who knows? Who knows? Like, I read Court of Thorn and Roses and I was inspired to make this as raunchy as possible. Yes, let's do that. That's what sells. Oh. Because I don't know about you, but I am tired. I am tired of raunchy sex. Tired. One thing that's really interesting about Fourth Wing is that when people die, they burn all their stuff. But today I went to an estate sale. I got this. It's actually a necklace. I think it looks kind of cool like this. Very art decor. Anyway, you want to see my haul? Of stuff that I got from an estate sale. My first ever estate sale that I ever went to. I got this shirt. It smells like basement. It's very lovely though. I got some hand sanitizer. I got some earrings. I wanted to try them on. There are a couple of recent young adult novels that it's kind of like in certain respects. So The Hunger Games is a book that I would say it's like because there's this like quelling of young people. And I suppose that there's something about that, you know, it, because what is that one book that it's also like, so there's the Maze Runner series that it kind of reminds me of a little bit too, and that they're like jumping platforms and things like that. It has a little bit of that in it, because like there's this element of like being tested and you know, the possibility of death, and there's a specialness to them, so it has a little bit of Hunger Games in that they're being singled out, but a little bit of Maze Runner in that they're being tested. It feels, there's a little bit of because it feels dystopian. It feels dystopian the way this world is, because there's this constant war. There are these things called venin, which are dark wizards, you know. In so many words, they're like, you know, dark wizards that have taken over, you know, they have misused magic or whatever. And they're coming for the good people or whatever, destroying cities and doing all sorts of stuff. Spoilers. I'm going to put spoilers in the title. But it has a little bit of it has romanticy. And so I think she takes from like A Court of Thorn and Roses in that aspect with the like sexualization of it. So it's not just like a young adult, you know, romance novel in those aspects. It's definitely geared towards older people. It's not just a young adult novel. It's definitely something for adults in that aspect, but it's written in the young adult style. So it's like it's like I would say it's easy reading because you can read like 300 pages and it's not difficult reading. It's probably like a 6th grade reading level as far as like the hardest word that I read in that book was sublaxolate, which is such an interesting word. I've never heard of that word before. And so I was like, I had the digital version, so I was able to look it up. And they use that word several times, sublaxolate. And it means to go from this world into the supernatural world. And I was like, sublaxolate. And I was like, I think that's how it's pronounced. Hang on, let me look it up. So that's how you say it, subluxation. Sublaxing. And it doesn't mean, but when I looked it up on the Wikipedia or on the digital app, it says to go from this world into the supernatural world. But when I looked it up online, it means to break a broken bone. So it's interesting the way that the Kindle app was defining it, as opposed, like Webster's dictionary was defining it, as opposed to the medical term for what it means. So interesting. Because I was like, what does this mean? And it kept coming up to go from this world into the supernatural world. And I was like, what an interesting word. And I was like, I don't know what this means. And I was like, I could have looked into it further, but I just didn't. But I kept seeing it, and I was like, it's kind of like how in 50 Shades of Grey, which has become a normal part of my vocabulary now. Thank you so much, 50 Shades of Grey. Replete. They ate and were replete. It's like every other word in the 3rd book, 50 Shades Freed. They ate, fucked, and replete. I swear to God, if you read the 50 Shades of Grey series, by the 3rd book, that's all they did. They had sex, they ate, and they were replete. She says it like at least like 6 times, I swear to God, in the book. But replete is a 50 Shades of Grey word. But authors get stuck on these words and they use them over and over again. And sublaxate, is a word that Rebecca Yarros uses regularly in her books. And I don't know why she likes that word, but she used it at least 3 times in the book. And I was like, oh, I learned a new word. Oh, I learned a new word. That's a Rebecca Yarros word. But have you ever noticed that sometimes authors like get stuck on words and it's like, oh, they just really like that word. They looked it up and they were like, this is the word I'm going to use and this is going to define this novel. But I like it because of the definition of the Kindle definition that it was giving, which was to go from this world into the supernatural world. And then the medical dictionary term, which is to break a bone, to break the bone of the joint. So, yeah, thinking about that. But the thing about it is, the thing that defines the book in the end isn't the fact that she can easily break bones, is the fact that she's able to stave off poison, which I found interesting. That she was able to metabolize poison. I wonder if that's part of like her, like a supernatural power that she has, that she's able to like, or that, no, because her brother mended her. That's right. He like mended away her poison. But the fact is that she was able to survive poison that she had been. It was kind of karma that she got poisoned too, by the way, because she had been poisoning people all book, and then she gets poisoned and she survives. She has that main character syndrome. Like, I'm not dying, bitches. You're not killing. I'm a bad bitch. You can't kill me. Yeah. But fuck, is that a long book? I hate fantasy books that are so long. Why do they have to be like 600 pages? That's what I want to know. Why do they have to be so long? The sex, yeah, I talked about the sex, in the book, not earlier. The thing about it is, it's a good book. It's a good book. The dragon stuff was better. The story, when you follow the storyline is better. But the sex was distracting, and I think that that's something that they play into the storyline. I found out there are 2 more books, and I was like, fuck. I have to keep going. The next book's called Iron Flame. There are 3 books in this series already. Oh, no. Kitten's like, oh, yeah. Keep reading. But that's my thoughts on it. It has that young adult idea about it. With, as far as literature goes. It also has a little bit of Avatar, The Last Airbender in it, too. A little bit of Avatar. Because they're channeling a little bit of, like, Merlin myth, too, because they have, like, dragons. A lot of, like, fairy myth or something. Maybe, like, maybe Beowulf inspired, kind of. There's something like English myth sorted somewhat. Something about dragon, werven and dragons and all of that. Perhaps like Beowulf. Perhaps Merlin inspired. Perhaps Aragorn a little bit. I'm trying to think of like classic fairy tale myths, because we have like Merlin with like mages and things like that, and this idea of being like special. There's kind of some video games that it reminds me of too, like a little bit of Baldur's Gate. A little bit of, perhaps, what would dark mages be? Like, a little bit of, Skyrim, maybe, because there are dark mages in Skyrim. Couple quests about that. When you join the Wizard Academy, I think you fight dark mages. there's something about a mixture between like this feeling of oldness to it because they're riding dragons, and there's something that kind of makes it feel like outdated, that they're using like naturalistic dragons that are like part of the natural world. But then they're wearing like flight weathers, so flight weathers, and they're using like textiles and things like that. So that's like a mark of like industry and technology, and like they have like weapons. So it's like a mixture of like old and new. There's a sense of like not knowing what time period they're in, and what year it is, and but there's like a mixture of like this classical sense, or like old style, and like new style. So not really defining which year it is, which is interesting in a fantasy novel. It's not quite sure whether or not we're on Earth or an Earth-like planet, because they haven't mentioned birds. And that's how you know when you're on Earth, is if they talk about birds. They've mentioned dragons, but they haven't specifically mentioned like birds or bird-like creatures. If you hear the birds, if they talk about birds singing, then you know you're on Earth. They did talk about sheep and goats. So that would connotate mammals, which would connotate an Earth-like world, because it would talk about like evolution of creatures. So probably an Earth-like world. But that's how you, in fantasy, that's how you know you're on Earth, is because there's birds. You look at the fantasy creatures, like the creatures. If there's Earth-like creatures, then you know you're on Earth. Most fantasy worlds are some variations of Earth, some kind of multiverse Earth, whether they intend to or not. And that's what makes it fantasy instead of sci-fi. Okay. That's all I got for you. I'm gonna go